We start this week's episode in 2008 in Northern Ireland. Marianne Smith is working as a mortgage advisor. Marianne is fascinated with Ireland and has been since a young age. She's so fascinated, in fact, that in the year 2000, following an online relationship, she married a local, Stephen Smith, so that she could stay as long as she wanted. Now, you can make good money as a mortgage advisor, but for Marianne it's not quite enough. So she's developed a bit of a sideline gig. She has been offering investment advice. Although it's not immediately clear if she's legally authorised to do so, she's been discussing a high-interest bank account offered by the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and she has an amazing deal. If a client invests £20,000, they'll receive £400 in interest payments every month. That's an annual interest rate of 24%. An astounding deal with no risk. Why wouldn't you jump at the chance? And Marianne would offer similar deals to other clients over the next year. In 2009, those interest payments stopped, and by October 2010, Marianne was gone. Investigators found no evidence that the Commonwealth Bank accounts ever existed, and the money, well, Marianne had kept it. This week, we're talking about the so-called Queen of the Con, because this is the true crime podcast that helps keep you safe from scams, hacks, and frauds. If you enjoy true crime scam stories, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. Jonathan is in the television industry and has worked as an off-beat reporter for morning TV and has been a producer for Shark Tank and worked on many other reality shows, so he has some experience knowing when someone's being genuine or not, and knows how to do his homework. Jonathan's hosting a get-together for the people in his building. A legal dispute with a neighbouring building has denied them access to a pool, and the residents want to take action. One of the attendees was Mayor. Mayor encouraged Jonathan to keep fighting for pool access, and the pair soon became friends. Mayor was from Ireland and had come to America in the 1980s fleeing violence. Her family members had been threatened, some even murdered. Despite those threats, the family members who remained in Ireland were well connected and wealthy. And so was Mayor. She didn't have to work, but she chose to, working for a travel agency where she generated revenue of over $1 million a year. A job secured through her family connections. What did Mayor and Jonathan have to do with the Northern Ireland story? We'll get to it, I promise. Jonathan and Mayor's relationship continued to deepen. Now, this wasn't a romance. Jonathan's gay and he lives with his husband, but they got close enough over the next 14 months that they were saying, "I love you" on the phone, but only in a platonic way, of course. They'd shared a lot of personal details, so Jonathan felt comfortable telling Mayor that he'd been disowned by his family. "So have I," Mayor shared. Her uncle had recently passed with an estate of €25 million, and her family was trying to get her disinherited of her 20% share, and they'd identified a particular cause regarding felony convictions that made people ineligible to inherit as their target. Maybe it was the reality TV producer in him, but Jonathan became convinced that the family would strike through Mayor's job. Although Mayor dismissed this, whether it was happenstance or something else, Jonathan was right. A couple of weeks later, he received a call from the Century Regional Detention Centre. It was Mayor. She had been accused of stealing $200,000 from her job. For Jonathan, this felt like confirmation that his friend was indeed being targeted by her family. Jonathan had to arrange a bail bondsman to get her out. Mayor had a boyfriend, but he was not only married, but also in political circles. If you pay someone's bail, it goes on the public record, so he couldn't do it out of fear it would be reported in the news. Most bail bondsmen wanted about $7,000, but the boyfriend was able to use his connections to find someone who could do it for $4,200. Jonathan paid, and the boyfriend quickly paid Jonathan back. Mayor was out of jail, but now she'd lost her job, and the case proceeding against her could derail her inheritance. Mayor showed Jonathan numerous letters from lawyers over the next few months, suggesting that there's no evidence or that crucial evidence hadn't been turned over as required, which should lead to a dismissal. Meanwhile, Jonathan and others rallied round Mayor. Mayor discovers she's actually psychic, and with a little help from Jonathan, starts selling services as a psychic. Jonathan, with his TV skills, helped with the production of a video for our new website. Meanwhile, the case is still rumbling on in the background. At the 3-year point, a despondent Mayor turns to Jonathan. The district attorney has frozen her bank account, but she needs to pay $50,000 to see the case dismissed. Jonathan, of course, doesn't have that kind of money. But he does have credit cards, so he allows Mayor to charge his credit cards, and that's the end of the story, right? Surely the charges go away, Mayor gets her inheritance, and everything's all square. No, how could it be? I haven't told you how the Northern Irish mortgage broker fits into things yet. We'll get there. Apparently the judge was not pleased with this payment to the DA and declared it to be money laundering, but classed it as a misdemeanor rather than a felony. It's resulted in Mayor being imprisoned for 30 days. Jonathan decides he's going to visit Mayor and tries to book a visit online. It's only then he realised the real reason why Mayor is in prison, and it's not money laundering. It's felony grand theft, and Mayor isn't Mayor at all. She's Marianne. Yes, the American who travelled to Northern Ireland and married a local so that she could stay. Yes, Marianne Smith, the mortgage broker. The discovery that Marianne, Mayor whatever we're going to call her, had lied about a case was just the beginning for Jonathan. He delved into the court records, utilising all of his reporter and TV skills, and learned a great deal. She had really stolen $200,000 from the travel agency that she worked for, and the money that he paid for the DA? Well, that was part of a plea deal to avoid 5 years in prison, and it was only $40,000 that was needed. She'd presumably kept the rest for herself. There was no Irish inheritance. She was born in Bangor, the American one in Maine, not the Northern Irish one, and pretty much everything that she'd ever said had been made up. Still, Jonathan picked her up from the prison and drove her home. On arrival, he confronted Mayor and told her that he only wanted to hear from her if she had a payment towards the money that she owed him. Jonathan, however, wasn't finished. He tried reporting to the police, and after overcoming initial indifference from an officer, he managed to file a report. Despite having mountains of evidence showing that he was tricked into giving her the money, the officer remained indifferent. "You gave her the money," the officer shrugged. "It's not a crime." Jonathan disagreed, pointing out that obtaining money by deception is indeed a crime. It's the very definition of the word fraud. But the officer dismissed him with a wave of a hand, saying, "Simple advice, don't give money to strangers." But Mayor was no stranger, or so he thought. Mayor, or Marianne, became Jonathan's obsession. Over the next few years, he would comb records, hire private investigators, and even put his marriage and financial health at risk to get to the bottom of who Marianne Smith was and what she'd done. He's written books and even a podcast called The Queen of the Con about his adventures. You'll find Jonathan and Marianne in season 1 of that. But his tenacity paid off. Jonathan started making contact with all sorts of victims of Marianne Smith. She had over 23 pseudonyms. She'd run fake cancer scams and used her natural low iron levels to help get her photos to help sell on that con, and at one stage she'd even impersonated Jennifer Aniston. She'd been a sugar baby who'd gone on to extort her sugar daddies and run the psychic con more than a few times. Victims who found his online blog kept reaching out. What we're covering here only scratches the surface of what he discovered. Eventually, his blog's readers would include the police service of Northern Ireland, who were very keen to find Marianne, and those scams at the top of the show she did as a mortgage broker, those were just the tip of the iceberg of what she'd gotten up to whilst there. Eventually, police forces in the United States also got interested. So much for not a crime. In 2018, she was arrested for the scams she ran against Jonathan. Not that she'd been quiet all this time. She'd managed to poison many of the residents of their still shared apartment complex against Jonathan, describing him as crazy and even scamming them for money she said was to make him go away. And during a trial, she tried to file a restraining order against him in the hope that it would make him unable to testify. A year later, she was convicted and sentenced to 5 years. But it didn't stop there for Mayor. In 2024, she was extradited to Northern Ireland. And just a few weeks ago, in September 2025, she was convicted again. Not the way she had imagined staying in Ireland. One of the more alarming things revealed by Jonathan is just how few scam victims reported this to the police. Given the initial lack of interest from them, who can blame them? However, Jonathan's success in tracking down Mayor and other victims demonstrates the importance of sharing your scam story. Please email us yours so we can include it in future shows. There are 2 things to remember, however, from Marianne or Mayor's scams. First, remember this. Scams feed on trust. Anyone can fall victim to a scam. It's not about being gullible or elderly. Anyone can have their trust and confidence exploited. Confidence tricksters or con artists live up to their name precisely because they manipulate trust. Jonathan wasn't foolish. His ability to track down the whole story when the police wouldn't or couldn't is proof of that. Second, if something sounds too good to be true, it's because it's too good to be true. It's hard to apply skepticism to someone who you think of as a friend, but a little wariness is wise, especially when dealing with extraordinary tales. In the back of your mind, always ask yourself, is this really true? No matter if it's a friend, a news report, or anything else. Look for ways to confirm what you're being told is true, rather than accept it's true. That applies to us also. That's why we put references and further reading on our website for each episode, and you'll find that at www.scamshacksandfrauds.com. Check it out for yourself if you don't believe me. I've been C, and this has been Scams, Hacks and Frauds. Please remember to send us your scam story at CEE@scamshacksandfrauds.com. This podcast is available to reuse for free under the Creative Commons with Attribution Share Alike license. The music is not included in this license. For more information on the Creative Commons license, please visit creativecommons.org.